Most people are moving fast, but they are not moving forward. They wake up, grind, scroll, react, consume, repeat. They think they're building a life, but what they're really building is noise. Now and then, a different kind of person emerges. Quiet, focused, unshaken. You feel it when they walk in. They carry no chaos, no desperation. Their mind is their home, and it is in order. This is not luck. This is not genetics. This is trained, and it's rare. The top 1% think differently. Not just smarter, not just harder, but deeper. They don't run after outcomes. They reshape their inner world until the outcomes must follow. This is not theory, it is law. In this video, we're going to explore how they do it, how their mind works, how they face pain, how they use silence, detachment, and discipline to separate themselves from the crowd. These are not motivational quotes or surface-level tricks. These are principles rooted in ancient Shaolin wisdom, tested over centuries in both the monastery and the world beyond it. Most people never hear about these ideas because they're too busy reacting. But those who slow down, those who look inward, they find the doorway. By the end of this video, you will not only understand how the top 1% think, you will start to recognize the shifts happening in your own mind, thought by thought, choice by choice. This is how mastery begins. You are watching the Shaolin Soulfire. Welcome, subscribe and walk this path with us. Pain is not your enemy, running from it is. There was a winter when I trained in the mountains, alone. Snow covered everything. The cold didn't just touch the skin, it entered the bones. On the third day, I remember thinking, why am I doing this? Why not return to warmth, to ease? That question itself became the teaching. In the West, discomfort is something to be escaped. But in the Shaolin tradition, it is something sacred. We are taught not to react, but to observe, to ask, why is this here? What part of me is being revealed by this tension? This is not passivity, it is presence. The concept is called Wu Wei, non-resistance. It does not mean we sit and suffer for no reason. It means we stop fighting life. We stop demanding that reality be different than it is. And in that stillness we learn. Most people try to fight the storm, arguing with it, resenting it, pretending it shouldn't exist. But the top 1%, they stand still in it. They slow their breath. They watch the chaos. And something happens. The storm moves through them, but it does not move them. This is the training. You don't overcome hardship by force. You dissolve it by becoming immovable inside. Not hard, not cold, just deeply rooted, like a tree that bends in the wind but does not break. The pain you feel is a message, not punishment, not failure. A message that something in you is being refined. Ego burns away, illusions fall off, and what remains is stronger, quieter, clearer. Until one day you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you begin to ask, what is this awakening in me? Most people live as if every thought is true, as if every impulse must be obeyed. But the disciplined mind knows better. It doesn't follow every command the mind gives. It watches. In the temple, before we were taught to strike, we were taught to sit. Before movement, stillness. Before reaction, breath. This was not a delay. It was the real training to wait, to watch, to return to center before making a move. The top 1% live by this. They create space between thought and action, sometimes only a breath wide, but it's enough. In that space they see clearly the story, the pattern, the fear, and instead of reacting blindly, they choose. This is how the mind becomes a servant, not a master. Through breathwork, they slow the nervous system. Through meditation, they observe the constant chatter without being dragged by it. Through movement, slow, focused, intentional, they bring the body and mind into alignment, not just once, but daily. The discipline is not in intensity, it's in consistency. Ancient teachings call this the path of no mind, not because the mind disappears, but because it no longer controls you. Like a sword in its sheath, the mind becomes sharp but still, ready but not restless. The average person speaks without thinking, moves without awareness, lives in reaction. But those committed to mastery, they pause, they hold their words, they step back before stepping forward. And it is in that pause, not in aggression, not in speed, that power arises. Power without noise, control without tension. This is the quiet strength that cannot be faked. It doesn't shout, it doesn't need to. It simply chooses its response and lets everything else pass. In the monastery, we didn't train only when we felt inspired. We trained because the bell rang. Rain, snow, exhaustion, it didn't matter. The bell called and we moved. Over time, the bell stopped being outside. It started ringing within. This is discipline, not punishment, not force, but rhythm, sacred repetition. The top 1% understand this. They don't wait for a feeling to lift them. They don't rely on mood or inspiration. Those come and go like wind. What remains is structure, practice, a path followed again and again until it becomes part of the soul. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think it's rigid or harsh, but true discipline is soft in its power. It allows the mind to rest because it knows what to do. No guessing, no debate, just one clear action taken with full attention. In Shaolin tradition, every form is repeated thousands of times, not to impress anyone, but to study the self, to remove hesitation, to understand movement from the inside out. In that repetition, something deeper forms, spiritual endurance, the ability to keep going even when no one's watching, even when it's hard, especially then. This is how inner mastery is built, quietly, through mornings you didn't want to rise, through movements your body resisted, through moments your mind begged to quit and you continued anyway, not to prove anything, but to honor the path. Motivation fades, emotion shifts, but discipline stays. And in time, it transforms you. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but completely. There was once a student who spent 7 years practicing the same form. Every morning before dawn, the same stance, the same movement, the same breath. Visitors would pass by and scoff. He's still doing that? But one day, a master from another temple watched him. After only a few moments, the master bowed. Not because the form was new, but because it was pure. This is the way of true mastery. It is quiet, unseen, often misunderstood. The top 1% don't move to impress others. They move to refine themselves. While the world chases novelty and applause, they chase precision, not louder, not flashier, deeper. They are not interested in appearing great. They are devoted to becoming great, even if no one claps for it. In ancient training, progress wasn't measured by belts or titles. It was measured by how deeply a form lived in your body. Could you perform it without thought? Could you feel its energy without effort? That's what counted. That's what endured. The same applies in life. Most people want fast results, but the wise choose slow mastery. They know that growth that lasts is growth that's earned, not by jumping from one thing to the next, but by staying, focusing, returning, again and again. Consistency is the gate. Patience is the key. The ego doesn't like this because it's not glamorous, but the soul recognizes it. The soul grows in the repetition, in the humility of showing up even when it's hard. One day, the form becomes invisible, only presence remains, only power, and by then, you're no longer trying to be anything. You've simply become. There's a moment in every seeker's path when they realize peace doesn't come from holding on, it comes from letting go. In the temple, one of the first lessons is how to pour tea. Not quickly, not carelessly, slowly, with attention, but also with surrender. You pour, and then you stop. You don't try to hold the tea in mid-air. You don't chase the last drop. You let it fall. You trust the flow. This is the essence of detachment. Most people confuse it with indifference. They think letting go means not caring, but it's the opposite. True detachment is rooted in deep care, but without obsession, without fear, without the need to control what was never ours to begin with. The top 1% understand this. They give their full presence to a moment, a person, a project, but they do not grip it with desperation. They plant the seed, they water it, but they do not scream at it to grow. This gives them an edge the world doesn't see. While others are drained by overthinking, by trying to control outcomes, by emotional attachment to every rise and fall, the few remain calm. Not cold, not distant, just clear. Their mind becomes like still water, able to reflect, able to act with precision, because it is not fogged by anxiety or ego. In ancient teachings, this was called walking the middle path, not clinging, not pushing away, simply standing in the center, grounded in awareness, open to life as it is, not as we demand it to be. There is power in caring without clinging, and freedom in loving without needing. In the early stages of training, students often believe the path to mastery is about doing more techniques, more hours, more effort, but in time, they all meet the same realization. Refinement is not about adding, it's about removing. A senior monk once said, "You do not sharpen a blade by stacking metal on it. You sharpen it by taking metal away." The world today encourages excess. If something isn't working, people pile on new routines, more apps, louder advice. But the masters, they go the other way. They subtract, they slow down, they clear space. This is the way of essence, not just in practice but in life. The top 1% aren't overwhelmed because they don't carry what isn't theirs. They don't chase every opportunity. They don't say yes to every call. They know that focus is a limited resource and they protect it like gold. Stillness becomes their strategy, silence their sanctuary. In Shaolin discipline, we were taught to sweep the training hall before practice, not for cleanliness alone, but for the mind. A clear space reflects a clear mind. Every object has its place. Every movement has its purpose. Nothing extra, nothing wasted. The same applies to thought, to emotion, to daily life. When you remove distraction, what's left is presence. When you let go of trying to do everything, you finally do the one thing that matters with full attention. And that is where power lives. Not in the noise, but in the quiet underneath it. Not in accumulation, but in precision. This is how true mastery is built, by carving away the unnecessary until only truth remains. A tree does not rush to grow. It breaks through the earth quietly, inch by inch, season by season. What's unseen, its roots takes the longest. But without those roots, no height can be sustained. The top 1% live like this, rooted, focused, patient. While the world celebrates speed, they think in decades. They understand that true success, inner or outer, is never built in urgency. It's built in rhythm, in repetition, in letting time do its work. In the monastery, there was a student who trained in silence for 2 years before speaking a single word in the main hall. Not because he was forbidden, but because he was watching, studying, listening. When he finally spoke, his words carried weight, not because they were loud, but because they came from depth. Most people get restless. They want immediate results, instant feedback, quick transformation. But that mindset leads to shortcuts, and shortcuts steal the substance of the journey. Those who seek mastery choose a different pace. They endure the boredom. They move through plateaus. They build things brick by brick, knowing each piece matters, even when it's unseen, even when it's slow. This is how temples were built, how wisdom was passed down, how strength was earned, with time, with care, with unwavering commitment to something larger than the moment. Patience is not passive, it's powerful. It says, I trust the process. I don't need applause today because I'm becoming someone who doesn't rely on it. And that patience becomes their advantage. While others burn out in the sprint, they remain steady in the marathon. In the monastery, not everyone was allowed inside. Before someone could cross the threshold, they were watched, not to judge but to protect. The space was sacred. Every stone, every breath held intention. Chaos had no place there. The mind is no different. It is a temple, and the wise protect it like one. The top 1% do not let just anything walk through their mental gates. They are deliberate about what they read, what they hear, who they allow close, not from arrogance, but from clarity. They know the cost of unfiltered noise. A single careless thought, repeated enough, becomes a belief. A single negative voice, if tolerated, can cloud the clearest mind. So they guard their inner world the way a monk guards the meditation hall, with discipline, with devotion. Most people treat their mind like a public market, open to everything, no boundaries. But wisdom needs stillness to grow. It needs space, not just from others, but from the constant pull of meaningless information. The masters choose silence over gossip, nature over news, solitude over shallow talk. And in that quiet, something begins to rise: discernment, strength, peace that doesn't rely on external calm. This is not about isolation, it's about integrity, knowing what serves your spirit and what steals from it. A clear mind is not an accident, it's a result, a product of daily choices to protect what's sacred and release what isn't. Because in the end, your mind is your monastery. If you let anything in, don't be surprised when peace leaves. But if you guard it well, it becomes something rare. A place where truth can speak and be heard. The mind of the master is not hurried, it's not loud, It doesn't reach or chase. It simply moves with intention, one step at a time, like a monk walking through the garden at dawn. This is the way of the top 1%, not because they possess more, but because they carry less noise, less fear, less need to prove. What they build from the inside, from stillness, from clarity, from discipline earned in silence. You don't need a monastery to begin this path, just awareness, a breath, a single pause before your next action. Ask yourself, is this aligned or is this noise? Choose from that place. Let your no be honest. Let your yes be full. Let your life reflect your inner order. If this teaching resonated with you, walk with us, subscribe to Shaolin Soulfire, and may your steps be steady and your spirit clear.